Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so our first presenter is Dr. Matthew Cotter, and he's the Director of College Now at Bronx Community College. And our second presenter is Imalinda McSpadden, and I practiced this another time. Dr. Imalinda McSpadden, who is also from Bronx Community, and she's an assistant professor. That's all I have the information. And we have our very own Dr. Kathleen Ranka from the nursing department and from Hostos. Okay?
Thank you for coming. I know this is a technology kind of conference. I'm more sort of tech light, but I'm looking forward for, one of the reasons why I want to present is to get some feedback in terms of how I could better, in terms of my programming, weave more sort of STEM related and technology related dimensions. So this is, my presentation is pretty much about the 10th grade initiative that we've worked for now 2 years to create. Prior to my arrival at BCC, there were no 10th grade programming, or it was mostly non-credit workshops. And both attendance and the results were rather mercurial. And so we sort of worked very closely with department chairpeople, with deans, but also with College Now central offices to create a college credit 10th grade developmental experience. And this is actually quite fitting given the population that we're serving, which is, again, an underserved population that are largely going to be ethnically diverse and academically unprepared. One of the challenges that we're finding at BCC is graduation and retention rates being considerably low. And so there's the onus on what the high schools are doing is greater than ever before. The good news is that most high schools, if you're not aware, now have to basically answer to the Department of Education in terms of their report cards. There's a line item on their report cards that has college and career readiness now. And so it's been actually a boon to College Now because we have more and more high schools coming to us rather than us having to go with a dog and pony show to get them to register for any of our courses. One of the things that sort of increased the not only the enrollments but the enthusiasm has been our targeting 10th grade populations. So for those of you who don't know, College Now is a dual enrollment or a concurrent enrollment program. They're doing college level work while they're taking college level courses. We try and sort of, we're in the sort of acculturation business, and so we try and color every one of our courses with a little bit of, plumbing the depths of the student's ignorance about college while they're taking, say, an introduction to psych or sociology or even a painting or drawing class. More importantly, we are having students develop the character and content of a higher education through the structure and function of what a college does. You'd be surprised that most high schools inform students that they should be going to college, and then they point to computer terminals where they're supposed to apply to college, but very little is done in between. Part of that is reflective in the DOE budgets being repeatedly slashed, and more often than not, the lines that are slashed are going to be in college and career advisement. And you see this in a lot of high school teachers where they're teaching 4 classes and then all of a sudden they're now advising students to apply to college. So in a way, we're sort of supplementing that which the DOE and the city has taken away. Our core inquiries: how do we create the necessary and sufficient conditions under which students can meet the needs of contemporary society? We are fully aware that many of the high schools are sort of languishing in terms of this. How do we enlarge the spectrum of college choices, rendering them more informed than ever before, which was really the moral compass that guides our 10th grade programming. And more importantly, as a sidebar to this conference, getting them introduced to and excited about, technology, and especially the role technology is going to play in their, not only their high school education, but more importantly, the role that a sort of technological facility will play in terms of their collegiate survival, which we were really shocked at the dearth of exposure to technology in the high schools. And there's lots of political reasons for this, but by and large, if you subdivide what was once one high school into 7, somebody's going to lose the computer lab and have no access to technology. So this is something that we are trying to remedy to meaningful degrees. And more importantly, what reforms are needed if the promise of educational opportunity for as many high school students was possible to be achieved. This is sort of really another motivation for the 10th grade programming. And so we're pretty pleased by what's happened in the 5 years of my administration. We have about 17 meaningful partnerships, and about, when I took over the program, there were about 460 students annually. Next year, we plan on having between 1,700 to 2,200, depending on our 10th grade initiatives. And a lot of this enrollment increase is attributed to FYS, which means that we're starting to see data show that students, if we target them in 10th grade, they're actually re-enrolling in college now, because they're seeing connections between what we're doing in terms of collegiate intervention and their performance in high school. More on that a little bit later. The preamble to this was a zero-credit workshop that emphasized mostly photography as a means towards self-awareness, and then there were some throwaway things about college included. And so, again, students didn't know what to do with it. They were not excited. It didn't show up on a transcript. They didn't get a college ID. So, in a way, they were just largely asking us, well, what's in it for me from this point onward? And so, and more importantly, from my perspective, having taught in CUNY for 10 years, there was a little expository writing, right? So, what could we do to reinforce the skills that are so lacking that contribute to the low graduation rates and retention rates at BCC? So what we did is we wound up working, we basically formed a community of inquiry in the most meaningful sense of the term. And we wanted to reinforce the Think College Now spirit with a letter of more academic content. So we wanted to strengthen student engagement, their academic progress, but more importantly, greater self and collegiate awareness. So again, we're offsetting that which the high school is not providing for them, but at the same time, we're whetting their appetite for thinking about college way more seriously than ever before. The translation is we're trying to develop a student's confidence. More importantly, their independence. They're taking an ownership of their academic career way earlier than ever before. So, and we call this the first year seminar. This is offered at Bronx Community College, but what we do is totally different from what happens at Bronx Community College. We've essentially developed a curriculum specifically for a 10th grade population. There's way more academic freedom and flexibility at the FYS at the college level. For us, we felt something a bit more structured was what the students needed. Because again, you're dealing with a population whose maturity levels, you have to sort of gauge pretty much on the first day. And having something a bit more structured rather than something a bit more, exploratory, we felt, and the data is showing, was going to be way more fruitful. We integrate academic advisement. Again, we're plumbing the depths of the students' ignorance and then trying to ameliorate them, right? We're trying to have some peer mentors in the classes, but I don't think that that's working out too well. I can talk more about that later. But more importantly, we exported the class to the high schools. So we can control the environments within which this learning is taking place, but then we bring the students to the campus at least once a semester, and they kind of see living and breathing what it is that they're studying on a weekly basis, And behind all of this, my background is in American philosophy and education, and so I get to finally do my Dewey. And it really is a Deweyan Enterprise what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the connections and the boundaries between students' high school and their collegiate aspirations, and more importantly, their larger community a bit more porous. So that they can render some of the activities that we do in both FYS and College Now applicable to their collegiate environment, and we attach to their collegiate aspirations a sort of conception of the good life. And so we're hoping that this course becomes a springboard for them to think not just about college, but more importantly about college graduation and how college graduation is going to translate into the kind of life that they would love to lead. And we do that through introducing them to several disciplines and making those disciplines fairly relevant. So we connect an Intro to Psych course, or we connect interests or questions relative to social sciences to questions of the community as a whole. And they're doing this all in 10th grade, and so we're tapping into this sort of like cusp of curiosity, because some of the statistics also show that 10th graders is when they're deciding whether or not they want to finish high school in the first place. So if we can whet their appetite for a collegiate experience while they're doing college level work, and by the way, and it's all paid for by our program, we're hoping that we can do something about the graduation rates at the high school level. We're hoping. And I think we should all know too, and this might be particular for those of you who are involved in the community colleges, the DOE and CUNY is sharing more information than ever before, especially with regard to data. They're literally charting the development of students from 9th grade all the way until they enter and then perhaps even graduate CUNY. The centerpiece for FYS's success and we can talk a little bit about more of the technology stuff a little bit later, is student-centered teaching. It really is, everything takes place in the classroom for us. We prefer not to assign college-level homework for 10th graders just yet. So all the activities are taking place within a sort of community of inquirers themselves. They're little democracies, so the students are learning not just about college while they're doing college-level work, they're learning socialization skills that are very important, because they're going to be, some of the students don't know that when they graduate from their high school classes, they're going to a cold, heartless campus of 13 to 17,000 people where, they're only known by now their EMPL IDs rather than their names and their interests. So FYS is a wonderful springboard for, I say rather seriously that we're a cold water program, but we have a towel, and so we like to make sure that the kids survive and thrive, not just in high school, but also at the college level. And again, FYS, I think, is a wonderful springboard for that. And I train all the teachers. So having been involved in higher education and also in secondary education, we really make sure that our students know that they're getting some of the finest trained faculty, because there's a difference between being a college professor and being a College Now professor. And so we work tirelessly, at least 10 to 12 hours every semester. We constantly get feedback about whether or not this is actually, doing what we're claiming it's doing. We're kind of, what's the saying that you promised me earrings but only pierced my ears? We don't want that with FYS. One of the things, and the technological component of this is ePortfolio. On the college campus, it's way easier for students to utilize ePortfolio because they have email addresses. One of the challenges we're facing with College Now is that our students are non-matriculated, and so we have to really bend over backwards with IT to try and get them some degree or other of access. We are now, it's been brought to our attention that there are maybe open source platforms that we could use. And so we're getting the students not just interested in the sort of nuts and bolts of technology, but more importantly, that there's this thing called open source that they could certainly utilize in their entire lives. If you're unfamiliar with ePortfolio, basically ePortfolio is a little bit like YouTube, it's a little bit like Facebook. Students will create a profile that will follow them no matter where they go. It's a digital portfolio. So any work that they're doing in College Now can then be a platform for them adding all of their content while they're at CUNY or wherever it is that they go. One of the good things about College Now is that all of our classes, in addition to being free, they transfer on a 1-to-1 ratio throughout CUNY and throughout SUNY. And not to fear, so if a student, for example, gets into Harvard or Princeton, part of FYS is saying, oh, the good news is, here's what general education is, and here's where your 3 psychology credits, are going to go. So the students are enmeshed in a collegiate experience, and we're hoping, again, the data is still a little sketchy yet, we're hoping that the students, by the time that they go from FYS to high school graduation, we would have paid for 13 college credits. So they're going to be better prepared, and more importantly, they're going to be economically prepared to get out of college and graduate sooner. The outcomes. Here's where we get kind of sort of smiley face tempered with a little bit of lemon juice. We piloted 5 sections and had about 120 students. And after the 4th week, we had about 90 left. That's considerable. Some of it's behavioral, some of it's students like, this isn't for me. Also, part of it was the curriculum was still relatively inchoate, and we were trying to trying to figure out what was working. And clearly, in the fall of 2013, some things were not working. And a very low pass rate. Now, part of that is reflective in that the eligibility for FYS is so low. It's about a 70 GPA, because a lot of the students haven't taken their ELA or even their PSATs yet. So we're hoping, but for 2014-15, we were up to 16 sections, and we had 344 applications, and 250 were left after the 4th week. Again, similar things. Some of it's behavioral, some of it is just overwhelming. Sometimes it's very difficult to have a student, focus for 2 hours once a week after they've had a long school day. And, working in one of the poorest places in the United States where we are replete with socioeconomic challenges only compounds some of the issues. So there is an elephant in the room when we're talking about some of this stuff. And again, by having the students understand that there's a connection between their academic aspirations and maybe their political aspirations is very important. I'm not entirely sure the high schools are doing that, but that's a political issue that we sort of stay away from. What we are pleased with is the percentage of the passing rate. It's up about 10% since we've gotten things going. And we're very excited about that. We think it's reflective of the curriculum that we've developed. again, we are creating a College Now version of a college level course. That has been the outcome of both myself and my team, but also the central officers of College Now and the Division of Academic Affairs. We've all been putting this together to create something that we think is not necessarily going to be a pipeline for BCC. The interesting thing about the program is that if our students show up and do the work and do it well, they won't need remediation in at least reading and writing. I'm working on building an FYS in sort of math and technology, but we can talk about that a little bit later if you like. And so to close, I mean, we have some preliminary concerns, right? And the big concern for us in 2015-16 is going to be assessment. Is FYS doing what we claim it's doing? So far, the answer is saying yes with a but. Because the yes is, well, yeah, it was working because we have increased the amount of sections and increased the enrollments. But now we're going to see whether or not this new curriculum is actually more efficacious than not. And I look forward to talking to anybody at any time about this. The thing that I'm also interested in measuring is whether or not our programming actually increases the students' high school performance. So we're sort of tagging them like bears almost, because while the DOE and CUNY are interested in these students going into the CUNY system, we're interested in seeing if what we're doing actually increases their high school aptitudes. How we do that, I don't know, but thank goodness there's a division of assessment to help us. And more importantly, the DOE and CUNY want to know, is College Now actually an effective pipeline for CUNY schools? This is a big question, right? It's hard to balance that because we try and, most students actually in the Bronx who are in College Now actually go to BMCC before they go to BCC because they want to get out of the Bronx. So that's hard to measure, right, in terms just yet. Only a couple of hundred out of the many thousands that we have serviced have actually registered and finished at BCC. And that's it for me. So let me just say one more thing about the technology component. What we are doing now is that we are offering more and more STEM-related fields than ever before. In fact, we're actually sort of pioneering in the College Now setting. So we're offering courses in computer applications and technology, in sustainability. We are working with the Center for Sustainable Energy, with the Automotive Technology Program. So College Now is becoming a sort of platform for students to be thoroughly engaged with questions related to STEM. And the underlying, the letter M, because now we're going to be working on ways in which we can refine their math skills so that by the time that they graduate, the propensity for remediation will be minimal. Thank you very much.